Tonight's Fireside CharLA is brought to you in partnership with United Latinx Fund and Latino Coalition of Los Angeles. This online event series aims to engage, educate, and advocate on important and timely topics that impact LA's Latinx community during the COVID-19 pandemic and national civil unrest around police violence, as well as how we can support the local economy as a philanthropy. My name is Richard Corral, and I'm Interim Executive Director of the United Latinx Fund. I'd like to quickly thank sponsors of tonight's event, Southern California Gas Company and JPMorgan Chase, for their commitment to and investment in nonprofits like United Latinx Fund that work to transform, uplift, and improve our community's quality of life. Our program is designed to engage you, our audience. So if you have any questions, please enter your question in the chat box. Please note that everyone's audio and video will be muted until the question and answer session. Also, tonight's program is streaming on Facebook Live. So to access the video, please visit the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles' Facebook page, and a link is provided in the chat box right now. And also, once you visit the Latino Coalition's Facebook page, go ahead and host a watch party and invite your friends. So you can see here that I've started a watch party on the Latino Coalition's Facebook page, and I will be inviting my friends throughout tonight's conversation. Tonight's conversation centers on the census, the 2020 census. And as we all know, for generations, the census has been underrepresenting and undercounting Black and Brown communities. And despite a $187 million investment in outreach by the state and via nonprofits throughout California, including our guest tonight, California Community Foundation, the estimated median response rate for Latinos is 50% as of August, down by approximately 13 percentage points from 2010. So with us tonight are thought leaders in the philanthropic community and media, as well as census directors and leadership. Specifically, we have Stephanie Ramirez, the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the California Community Foundation. We also have Araceli Martinez Ortega, a reporter from La Opinión. And then we also have Adrián Vázquez, Census Field Director. So let's begin our conversation tonight on the critical importance of accounting for and engaging the Latinx community during the last few weeks left of the census count. First off, thank you to all of our panelists for joining us this evening. I know it was a sort of a last minute ask, but I just felt very strongly about the need to not only showcase the work, the very, very important work that you're doing, but also as a philanthropy, as well as the Latino Coalition has many nonprofit relationships. Both of us are very interested in ensuring that our nonprofit networks are connected and engaged to the census, particularly during this critical last month. So let's get the conversation going with the first question. And it could be popcorn. We have about 5 or 6 minutes for the first question. There doesn't have to be any particular order, so anybody can chime in. And the first question is, to engage the most difficult to reach Latinx populations, please share communication strategies that work best. Let's start with Stephania from California Community Foundation. Stephania?
Sure. So thank you, Richard, and good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here today. So let me share a little bit about the campaign that the California Community Foundation has funded over the last 2.5 years. So we've created a coalition comprised of over 115 community-based organizations representing 60 languages and over 16 hard-to-count community groups. So everything from homeless populations to Latinos to immigrants to people with disabilities. We are here to provide census outreach to make sure that those communities get counted. And so as part of this campaign that we've launched, which we call We Count LA, We have done a series of market research, message testing, data collection amongst several intervals as part of the campaign. And we've learned a variety of things in terms of what works for one community and what doesn't work for the other. And for Latinos in particular, you know, what we have learned is that messaging of resistance, that messaging of everything that we could possibly lose, that doesn't resonate very well for our communities. What they need to hear is more what is at stake and what they are to gain, you know, should they fill out the census. And that the messaging also needs to be very tailored to their families. They want to see themselves reflected in the images that we use. They want to see, they want to understand that, you know, them filling out the census means better education and services for their kids and their communities. So we've learned that sort of tends to work, and that's part of what we've incorporated in everything that we do in terms of outreach.
Excellent. And let's kind of dig a little bit deeper with Adrian, who's actually doing the work on the ground. So Adrian, same question in terms of share some communication strategies that you, Adrian, are you there?
Yes. You're breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask you to share your experience in terms of which communication strategies are most effective in relationship to the work that you've been doing around the census, and share a little bit about what you've been doing as well.
Sure. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. And, you know, I know this was put together last minute, but, you know, it's what it takes at this point in time when the administration is cutting a month out of, you know, the counting process. This was more urgent than ever. So thank you so much for helping putting this together, Richard. You know, really, you know, there was a lot to build off of from the work that We Count LA and that Stephanie was doing over at CCF. They you know, kind of put it in the hands of a lot of trusted community ambassadors that you know, that folks within the community trust and you know, are used to having conversations with, whether it's about healthcare or voting rights or anything, immigration rights, things like that. So I kind of got all those messages and went through what worked and what didn't work, you know, and got the best practices from different organizations and turned it into more of a traditional field campaign script, right? Stuff that we can put into a packet, you know, that people are more familiar to, that have done political campaigns, right? You get your script and you get your list of names and you go knock on some doors and you do it kind of the old-fashioned way. You know, because of COVID, obviously that changed. So we are relying a lot on these community partners that are doing efforts, you know, to help the community during this time of need, whether it's food drives or if it's testing or if it's distribution of PPE equipment. We try to be there as a support team, right, and using the right messaging for the community. When we do actually do canvassing and community engagement, we have a few of the same concerns that we've seen throughout, and a lot of that has to deal with, you know, folks with mixed immigration statuses in their homes and things like that. There is some fear out there amongst some residents, you know, that this information can be used by ICE or something like that, shared with them. So first and foremost, we talk about the confidentiality of them filling out the census to try to put them at ease with that. Then secondly, you know, we go to what Stefania mentioned, and it's what is there, what's on the table, right? And you know, when you're talking to a family of 5 or 6 or a multi-generational household, you know, you're talking about $2,000 a person in that home for the next 10 years each, right? You're talking about tens of thousands up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in really important resources. And I think COVID actually puts that in the spotlight even more, when you know, the Black and brown community is being affected the most by it, and the lack of testing and the lack of resources in our communities is a reflection of our lack of you know, response rates the last 10 years.
Right.
So we try to put that in that perspective, you know, confidentiality and the importance of what you're losing when you don't do the census, when you don't respond. And people have been very responsive. You know, I think the last number we got, you know, if you knock on 10 doors, you know, over 2 of those households, over 20% of those households will fill out the census with you, or will take, you know, you can assist over 20% of them, and the rest, you know, for whatever reason, they say they filled it out already, which is a polite way. Sometimes they're just saying, you know, you don't want to do it or you don't have time, or, you know, that's when those fears come into the back of the head, like, you know, and I heard the administration is, you know, going after the licenses. How do I know they're not going to go after the census next? And
Right.
it's a real concern.
Right.
So we try to address it head on.
So I'd like to pivot to Araceli. And Araceli, you've been covering the census for La Opinión for some time. And so I'd like to ask you, you know, the same questions in terms of communication strategies that have worked, and how your reporting on that topic has changed over time, and has been modified in terms of what the census was and what the census is now, and the communication strategies that are now currently being discussed by Adrian and Stefania. What are your thoughts, Araceli?
Well, I think that La Opinión has been the newspaper that has written and run most of hundreds of stories about the census and the importance that we participate. But I think with just over a month to go until the deadline to fill out the questionnaires, I think we need to intensify the message. It's a little bit sad because despite all the effort that we have done, we still see that the same barriers, countless barriers that our community is facing. So that's a little bit concern, because as Adrian mentioned, our people are still afraid of immigration. And they think that the question of citizenship is still included in the questionnaire. And it's really, we need to intensify the message in this last month that we need to be counted regardless of our race, language, or immigration status, because we need to let the people know that these statistics determine how much money we are going to receive.
Right.
So I think that there is still fears, a lot of fears among our community in regard to the census. So I can mention some of them during our talk, but I think in this last month, we need to make more work about it. Even we explained them that the information is confidential and cannot be disclosed to anyone. I think that the main issue here is that our people is very concerned about COVID-19. So there are two things: the immigration status and also the COVID-19. And people doesn't have the time with dealing with unemployment, remote work, children at home. So for many of them, the census is not a priority, as they have many problems to deal with. So it is quite a challenge that they take 10 or 15 minutes to fill out the form. So I think that in this in the next 30 days or a little bit more, we need to intensify the message and the importance that what should be counted, and try to address those barriers that the census workers have encountered when they knock on the door of the Los Angeles resident.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are many issues around this.
So I want to thank you for those remarks, Araceli. I really appreciate how you and Adrian and Stefania are very much sort of saying the same thing, but from your own perspective and from your own specific work, and also the leadership role that you're taking around the census. I really appreciate how you both all are sort of like addressing the same issue, but obviously from your different vantage points and leadership perspectives and activities. So thank you so much for that. That's I'm glad to see that everybody's on the same page. But going one step further, obviously as a philanthropy, the United Latinx Fund is very committed to ensuring that nonprofits can withstand COVID. And to that end, I know that many nonprofits have recently partnered with census workers. And specifically, these nonprofits are providing COVID emergency relief and services, particularly emergency food distribution. And I know that there's been partnerships between those nonprofits, the food distribution, as well as with census workers, as well as other food distribution programs that are census related. So Stefania, can you give us just a quick kind of overview of what, how CCF has kind of pivoted to this strategy, and share a little bit more about the strategy and its impact?
Sure, happy to. So let me just start off by saying that there is no sort of one size fits all approach to getting our communities counted, especially us as Latinos. I mean, it takes a variety and a combination of tactics and messaging to sort of reach our communities. But one of the things that, CCF really invested on was an on the grounds campaign. Originally, prior to COVID, we had made a significant amount of grants. So we have funded over 115 organizations because they are the trusted messengers, because they know these communities, because they could be deployed to go out there. They were all planning a series of big events, door knocking, a lot of direct outreach activities that they were planning on undertaking. Once COVID hit, these groups have been amazing at sort of being agile and responsive to the urgent call of still getting our communities counted, because there's so much at stake. Congressional, basically money and power, right? Congressional representation and resources, right? So they knew so much was at stake. So they've pivoted to everything from do-it-yourself videos, TikTok challenges, relying a lot on email, social media, phone banking, texting, to really do everything possible to get our communities counted. We are now we're about to enter the last month, the last 30 days of outreach, with the census being cut short by a month, unexpectedly by the US Census Bureau. So now that we're here, more than ever, groups like, like the YMCA, like Ultimate, they've stepped up and they continue to mobilize and to find approaches to engaging with community directly in a safe and socially distanced manner. So for example, YMCA is putting together a series of food distribution sites. They've been doing that all throughout these last few months. But now they also have canvassers and volunteers. We're always in need of more volunteers, people to be there with iPads. So as people are waiting for their food, whether it be in their cars or walking with their families, we take an opportunity to meet with them and to say, hey, have you filled out the census? If not, let us help you. Here's an iPad, you are having connectivity issues, here's a cell phone, like, let's get you to fill it out now. You want to do it by phone, you want to talk to somebody in a special language, like, let's get you those resources so that you can reach out and get counted. So those are some of the activities that are happening right now. We have a lot of partners, for example, in Long Beach Forward. Every weekend, they're going out there and distributing door hangers in communities. And while they're doing that, you know, they're talking to community residents and reminding them of the importance of census. They're hosting census caravans where they're dropping off these door hangers and then following up and, you know, honking in these in these communities, and driving through these communities, reminding people of, hey, the census is here. Watch TV, by the way, like, we're also on TV and we want to remind you the importance of the census. So those are some of the tactics that our groups have been undertaking right now, and it's yielding a lot of an increase in response rates. But it's a lot of coordination, and it also demands a lot of people power, right? Like I said, we're in constant need of additional support. We also have a special, right now we're also engaging a lot of street vendors. We know that our street vendors are hurting. And how do we engage them in opportunities where they become census ambassadors? And as they continue, you know, they continue to engage small businesses and street vendors to become platforms of engagement, and also where they distribute or they support sort of food trucks and helping people getting their forms filled out. So again, really being creative and nimble, and using what we can to mobilize in a socially distanced manner under these conditions.
Thank you for sharing that overview, Stephanie, and also sharing kind of the diversity of strategies that are being employed currently. And you're right, because the strategy that Ultimate is employing obviously is different than YMCA, right? But they both center around their COVID emergency programming, right? And leverage that. Adrian, from your perspective on the ground, tell us a little bit about how you see these strategies unfolding actually on the ground, working in partnership with nonprofits.
Yeah, well, I want to second what Stefania said about some of these organizations really stepping up. You know, I love going to the Y and seeing the you know, that gives me a lot of hope for the future when you see these young kids from their, I forget what it's called, their ambassador program or something like that. And they're just, you know, they're just go-getters, and they engage the community. You know, everyone is adhering to all the social distancing standards, and you know, they're all decked out in their PPE, and it could be 100 degrees out there, but you know, they're there and they're engaging the community about how important this is. And you know, if anyone's ever walked a precinct, you know how tough that can be, right? And you can go out there all day, maybe talk to 10 people, and maybe get, you know, half of those to be on your side on an issue. And you know, you know, it's difficult, and it's tedious, it's time consuming. You know, you have to do it over a long period of time. So you know, anytime I can send some of the team members over to do one of these events, you know, they usually, you know, they love it. It's kind of you know, a shot of energy for them when they sign up, you know, higher volumes of folks for the census. One of the important things to note, especially, you know, in Latino communities that are multi-generational, sometimes you have ADUs, you know, you have converted rooms, things like that. And a lot of family members don't know if somebody else already filled it out. And that's always that's a concern that they have at the door. They're like, maybe my kid filled it out. He's the one that uses the computer all the time. Or, you know, maybe my tío that lives in the back did it. So, you know, just letting them know that, you know, the Census Bureau actually looks through all the data, and they cross-reference all the addresses to make sure there's only one response per address. So there's no real penalty for double checking that you've actually completed the census, right? So if you're unsure about it, you could always you know, double check and get another confirmation for completing the census. So, you know, giving that information out to the community, that's one of their concerns as well. And then, you know, just helping out, like Stefania said, in terms of resources, being able to provide whatever you may need to, even though your organization is not 100%, logistically set up for doing the census and helping people with the census, we can always go in there and help you out with that, and take so that you can focus on whatever you're doing, if it's the food distribution or if it's the PPE, and we can take care of the census work. Also, teaming up with elected officials is very helpful. They always have quite a few resources. They're able to use their state, their city, their county resources to engage the community on issues regarding the census. I think the federal government's the only one that has kind of a different set of rules, but everybody else can engage. They've been very helpful. They've reached out. I just got an email today that they want us up in LAUSD in the Valley, to be at the grab and go locations to remind people to fill out the census and to help them with the information. So just being kind of a resource for folks that have enough going on with all their activities, so that that's one more thing that we can collaborate on, and you can send folks to either help you with training or to just run the program for a day or two.
Thank you for that. I appreciated hearing the not only the ways in which folks are taking leadership around being innovative, right, and leveraging their existing programming, but I also like the way in which you sort of are describing various types of partnerships that look different, that have different elements, but ultimately always have the same goal, right?
Yeah. If I could add one more thing also, these are a lot of these communities are a lot of the folks, the Latinx community that we're talking about here, a lot of them are in what's considered to be a hard to count census tract. And it could be a hard to count tract for a variety of reasons, apartment complexes, density, language barrier. It could be because no formal education, but a lot of it also is the digital divide, a lack of internet access. Maybe they don't have a smartphone, so you have to think sometimes out of the box in terms of where do folks that are part of this digital divide, where do they go, where do they get their information from? That's not what we're used to, right? If it's Facebook or if it's the LA Times app or something like that, where do they go for their information? And how do we reach them? So teaming up with as many partners that have each their own kind of communication with different people in different areas is extremely helpful, because I know, as Stefania said, they've been working at this for a very long time. So if someone's part of that digital divide and they haven't gotten that that ad or that commercial by now, they're probably not going to get it. It's going to take a little bit extra to reach them.
Right. And Araceli, if you could do me a favor and kind of share from your reporting, what, if any, of these partnerships among nonprofits have you featured in La Opinión, or have elevated partnerships around the census as a promising or best practice? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I should say that I'm not the only one reporter working on census story. There are other reporters working on this, but we have worked with different community organizations like Visión y Compromiso. And we are always trying to connect with any organization or anybody that is making an effort to create awareness among our community. But I wanted to say that in the next 30 days, we should more focus. We should write and run stories on those things that are missing there, that we need to emphasize. Like, for example, we need to let them know to the Latino community what are the resources. As Adrian mentioned it, there are people that don't have access to internet, or there are people that they have a smartphone, as somebody was telling me, that there are people that have many people that have a smartphone, but they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use technology They only know how to use Facebook. So we need to tell the people, these are the organizations that can help you. These are the phones that you can call, and because they can help you. And there are also many people that have 2 or 3 jobs, even in the middle of this pandemic, and they arrive home very tired, so they don't have time to call anybody to get help. So we need to let them know where they can, during the weekends, for example, who can help them. So there are many specific problems that we need to address in our stories in these next 30 days. So these is people can get the guidance that they need in order that they can fill out the census questionnaire, because and also tell them you should not, maybe we should tell them a story about this, you should not be afraid of this and this and this, and how can I prevent to suffer a scam, because there should be people, and there are people that are trying to take advantage of the census. So how can this make a difference, or how can I know that these people are really from the census or Bureau of Census workers? So we need to give in these last days the stories that in which they can find the resources that they feel confidence to fill out the questionnaire, or to look for the organization and give them the phone numbers where they can call during the weekend or after hours. So I think that we have made a lot of partnerships with different organizations. And I think we, as I mentioned before, we need to take advantage and intensify these partnerships in the last run, so we can really arrive to the point that we need, that people can feel confident and not be more afraid of somebody's going to call immigration, or this information is going to be shared with another agency. So we need to emphasize that they should not be worried about this, and this is something good that is going to help us.
Excellent. And
so I just wanted to jump in here. So part of what we're talking about is different levels of engagement, right? So what the foundation has invested in is also in creating a massive communications campaign where we are, talking directly to people and trying to persuade them with digital ads, for example, to fill out their census form. We're being very targeted in hitting those hard to count census tract. We also have a series of engagement tactics that the nonprofits, the CBOs, the trusted messengers are deploying. Some of that is direct outreach, some of that is phone banking, some of that is, like I said, street vendor engagement, small business engagement. So there's a series of platforms. And then bigger scale is some of the media partnerships that we also have going on that I'll talk about a little bit later. So there's varying degrees of sort of engagement that the foundation has been very intentional about deploying to mobilize and to reach our hard to count communities. But I also wanted to highlight, you asked Richard about sort of media engagement. And one of the things that we also funded and that we have also continued to cultivate is engagement of ethnic media. So every month we've actually provided ethnic media forums. We've had ethnic media forums led by Arturo Carmona and his team, where we do meet with ethnic media and we provide them briefings or information around census in terms of how are we doing in terms of our response rates and data and comparison, or in terms of other regions, right? Where are we on that? What are special nuggets that they can use for reporting, or again, to create those stories to hit our community so that it creates visibility. So again, that's also been happening, but I think one of the things that we continue to see is how do we create an even bigger drumbeat when our communities are still battling the fluidity and the challenges of COVID, when a lot of them are also struggling with unemployment or how they're going to feed their families. Food security issues are real. So I think what we're finding is there's other things that are obviously more pressing on people's minds, and then census. So we're trying as best as we can to sort of meet them where they are, right? And what we know that works for our communities, especially for our Latinos communities, is the personal engagement, the one-to-one access. So again, as you know, part of why we are funding the effort that Adrian is helping lead is in terms of knocking on doors and having people out there, is because we know that they're in certain communities, that's what it's going to take to sort of break through and to get them to fill out the form, because they're not watching, they're not following us on Instagram, right? They're not not being persuaded by certain content that we're putting out there. So we need to meet them where they are. So just wanted to sort of highlight that as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think that's really important. We're actually going a little bit over time, but I think that the conversation has been very rich. And I think that there's a lot of sort of clear takeaways that have been shared around communications, around strategy, around outreach and engagement, as well as around communications and the media. So thank you for that. And let's kind of use the last question as a way to segue into the Q&A and also into the mixer, which is, we would like to know, we have a lot of nonprofits, obviously, that are affiliated with United Latinx Fund and the Latino Coalition. We'd like to know what opportunities are there to partner with CCF and the Census going forward, and what would be the next steps for those folks who want to embrace and promote this strategy. I'll start with Stefania.
Great. And I have a few slides. I don't know if we can show them. So CCF has done a series of 3 rounds of funding. Our funding rounds have ended and we've come to a close. So while we can no longer provide resources in terms of a grant, I mean, we're also, again, running on, we have 30 days to go before the census ends. We do have a series of resources, virtual resources that we have created to help get up the count. And so if you visit WeCountLA.org, this is our sort of central hub, right? Our resource hub, our action center, where you can find everything from FAQs to, you know, if you have really particular questions around the census, or again, want to share content with your friends and family, you can have access to all this information here on WeCountLA.org. Next slide, please. We also showcase, we've invested a lot in making sure that our communities have access, and stakeholders that are interested in supporting outreach can see how are we doing in relation to other regions, right? So as of today, we are at 62.1% in terms of response rates. That's still very low. I mean, let me put that into context. In 2010, our response rates was 69%, and that landed us with the infamous spot of being categorized as the hardest to count county in the whole nation, not just in California, in the whole nation. So we are right now at 62%. We are projecting right now, if we continue at this rate, that we're not going to meet the 69% threshold. So it's really critically urgent that we, mobilize, and that we, make sure that we remind our friends and families to fill out their census form, that this has real implications for our community. Next slide, please. And so again, this is, we've created a digital toolkit. It's been downloaded over 15,000. It has the assets that we've created here in this toolkit have been downloaded over 15,000 times. And they're used from everything from our government parties, like, small cities, to all the CBOs. Next slide, please. Where they have access to a lot of content, everything from messaging to social media posts, to videos, to email resources, etc. So you name it, it's here. We're also having, and again, while this was created with CBOs in mind, it can also be very personalized and customized so that you guys can share in your own social media platforms, regardless of who you are. Next slide, please. And then finally, one of the things that we are undertaking and launching next week, Thursday, September 3rd, and that I wanted to make sure that I plug in here is a something that we're creating, a new broadcast. It's a census fill along. So inspired by the Hollywood Bowl and the sing-alongs there, we're creating a fill along where we're actually going to walk through like how to fill out the census form live and how to make it fun and interactive. So this is a partnership that we're launching with LACO also and Univision. And so again, it's going to be on September 3rd, around at 6:30 p.m. And so we're hoping that a lot of our Latinos watch this and take action that day. So that's it on my end.
Great, thank you. Adrian, same question for you. Opportunities to partner opportunities for nonprofits to partner with the census.
Yeah, and you know, more on the field end of it, if you send the information of any event coming up to Stefania or myself, or probably Stefania would be best, then I can provide the resources in terms of either like the little canopy, the pop-up banners with the QR codes for people to be able to fill out the census with their mobile device, and a couple of organizers there that can either help train your organization or that can, you know, be there for a few hours for the duration of the event to help sign people up. So those are the resources that, you know, I can offer kind of as the field director, but you know, willing to partner with any community or organization that has, you know, any events coming up. I know that those are few and far between given the COVID situation, but I know there's still some things going on out there, especially related to food distribution and to our communities of need. So I'm more than willing to partner up with anybody on those events.
Yeah, so if there's any events, I'll jump in here to clarify. If anybody has an event coming up where they need, you know what, we need flyers, we need door hangers, we want to be able to showcase that, email me and I'm happy to provide those resources so that you can share out within, you know, your networks.
Excellent, thank you so much. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to transition to the Q&A, but then also do the mixer at the same time. I'm reviewing the chat box. I don't see a lot of questions that were submitted. So Jake, if you could do me a favor and if you could open up, bring everybody in to the mixer, because we have a few nonprofit organizations that were mentioned today in terms of their innovative strategies and programming around COVID and the census. And I'd like for them to be able to chime in and share a little bit about their approach. And then we also have nonprofits that are affiliated with either LCLA or ULF. And so I also want to make sure that any and all questions are answered that they may have. So Jenny Carrion from Altamed, if we could unmute and turn her camera on. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm always very impressed with the innovative approaches and thinking that occur at Altamed for things that aren't necessarily directly related to health, but are indirectly related to health. And so Jenny, could you please share the work that you've done most recently to increase participation in the census through your existing health programming at Altamed?
Yes, thank you, Richard, for having us. And it's good to see all of you. Census absolutely has to do with health. A lot of the funding allocations that are going to be impacting our communities, not just now during the pandemic, but for the next 10 years, are going to be a result of this funding allocations. That's why it's been imperative for us to speak to every single one of our patients regarding the importance of the census. What we have done is we have reached out close to 2.7 million low propensity, hard to count census family members. Thanks to CCF, the investment that they have made in this work, Collectively, we have invested close to $3 million, and the return on investment is close to $376 million that is now protected and will be coming back to our communities.
Wow.
The big win for us has been in our clinics. Obviously, with the pandemic, we had to shift all of our work. And what we did is we started having kiosks at all of our clinic sites. And every time someone would come in, we would ask them if they had filled out the census. And they would say, oh, see, you know, we did it already. And then we would say, oh, did you get a small code or a long code? And then they're like, oh, we don't remember. And that's our way of our organizers knowing that they're lying to us. So we just nudge them a little longer. When during the patient visit, they got a reminder on computer screens about the census. When vitals were taken in the LVN nurse station, there was posters about the census. In the waiting room, there's commercials. Finally, when the doctor saw each patient, and as they were leaving, part of their prescription was to protect their healthcare by filling out the census. So all those folks that would tell us, oh, we got a short confirmation number, would then come back to the kiosk and like, oh, el doctor Shapiro me dijo que tengo que firmar esto, si no me va a regañar. So, you know, we thought that was really innovative. What I want to share is that while that's a very aggressive and intense model, all of us can do something. All of us can, you know, share the importance of this with our community members every time we see them. You know, I tell our team is that if we have someone miss an opportunity to fill out the census, that's a 10-year opportunity that we are dropping the ball on. So we're taking this very seriously. We're taking, you know, this the next 34 days, doubling down on outreach, doubling down on texting has been very successful for us because people are able to fill it out in the comfort at their home. And we've been doing a lot of training with organizations on how to walk them through the process to support their clients on how to fill out the census, and happy to support and help any organization that is still interested in doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Do we have anybody from the YMCA on the line by any chance, or anybody from American Red Cross? Let me check. Anybody from YMCA or American Red Cross? I know that we have Raul Claros, who was formerly of the Red Cross, but I was hoping to obviously the Red Cross has its hands full right now with all the wildfires. So clearly they're all hands on deck right now for the American Red Cross. But I did want to connect them to this conversation because of the incredible amount of emergency food distribution that they have done with LAUSD, as well as obviously other COVID-related testing and tracing that the American Red Cross has done. I thought that they would be an ideal partner for this type of a strategy. Are there any other nonprofits on the line that are joining us today that would like to share their experience partnering their existing COVID emergency response programming with the census? I believe the Latino Coalition, Cindy, definitely made some innovative investments and partnerships around the census. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Richard, and thank you to all the panelists for joining us tonight. Very happy to hear that there's still a big push for the census. We got funding from ULF back in, I would say, November to invest into the census. And as much as we wanted to plan and organize around this, again, COVID was a surprise, so we definitely had to adapt. Some of the events that we ended up sponsoring ended up being virtual. We did an event with Leah that turned out really great. We did some raffling to try to get people to incentivize to join the event. But most recently, something that I'm really proud about the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles doing is that our fundraising committee actually hosted a scholarship giveaway. We gave a scholarship to a Latina that's going to be attending UCLA in the fall. But as part of the application process, all the young ladies had to make a 1-minute video emphasizing the importance of filling out the census. So we have a bundle of, a couple of videos from all the 18-year-old young ladies really just emphasizing the importance of the census, talking about why it was important specifically for them and their communities, for their families to participate. So we're looking on bundling those videos and really just launching a week of census engagement and advocacy. So it's nice, you know, being able to see young women of color not only being civically participating and being motivated by the census, but really learning about this earlier on. I didn't know about the census until I probably hit college. So I think we're already a step ahead of ourselves and really just making sure that our youth are ready and that they understand this importance of the census and why their participation matters. And again, creating these really creative videos to emphasize to their community members why it's important for them to participate. So if you don't follow the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles Instagram page, I encourage you to. We'll be releasing those videos soon to again really just bring awareness of youth development, youth engagement, and then participation in the census.
Thank you, Cindy, for sharing. And it's been very valuable partnering with the Latino Coalition and, you know, developing real-time modifications and solutions and workarounds in order to be mindful of the current moment, but at the same time still work to raise awareness around the census and its importance. So thank you so much for your innovative thinking and leadership on that, Cindy.
Thank you, and you a lot for your partnership.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have anything to share in terms of their work around the census as well as COVID-19? Okay. All right, so let me wrap up today's program. I want to thank everybody for your leadership, for your flexibility, for your innovative thinking in order to engage folks to complete the census. I know this is not easy, and so I just want to personally say how thankful and appreciative I am for all of you and the work that you've been doing. Also, I just want to give you a heads up that next week's CharLA and then the following week's CharLA, so the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a CharLA Leadership Summit, in which we're going to be bringing back a lot of the featured speakers from previous CharLAs to update on their solutions and policies that they discussed during the CharLA initially. And then also we're going to try to have a policy conversation in which we're able to provide recommendations that can enhance these leaders' existing work in order to obviously better serve the most vulnerable communities that we all work with and care about. So that's next Thursday, and the following Thursday are CharLA Leadership Summits.